Hey guys, it's Andrea. So I'm here with part two of my testimony. So just to kind of get into it, for those of you who have read my testimony on my blog, this is a part of that. And it's gonna be kind of a condensed version of it, but also talk about some of the struggles I had last year. um, I kind of fell back into sin, and so yeah, I'm gonna talk about that. So for those of you who haven't read my testimony on my blog, before I came to know God, I really struggled with loving myself, and I so desperately wanted a man to love me that instead of seeking God, I sought the love from different guys. Um, I at the time I wasn't close to my dad, so I wasn't getting that fatherly love from him, and I guess I wanted so desperately to be validated. I wanted so desperately to be wanted, and I sought out different guys. When a relationship would end, I would be in a new relationship. So it was like a never-ending cycle, and that continued. That started when I was 18, and that continued until I turned 20. And so when I turned 20, like I started getting back into church, and I joined the youth group or the young adult group at my church, and was just really just seeking God and everything. But I still hadn't changed in that although I had God's love and I accepted God's love, I still desired a relationship. And there's nothing wrong with desiring a godly relationship. Where I made my mistake, I made that an idol. I obsessed over God bringing me a mate. So I was so focused on that I missed so much. I didn't get a lot out of my relationship with God. Like, He was working in me and He was changing me and everything. But in a sense, what I was pretty much telling Him, like, okay, God, your love is good, but it's not good enough. I still need that man in my life to love me. And so that continued for a while. And as time went on, God started to like reveal my heart to me. But I didn't know how to change. I didn't know how to submit that desire to Him and leave that desire in His hands. And so I struggled with that for a bit. And so I guess we can just kind of like fast forward towards the end of 2013. So at the end of 2013, my ex came back into my life. And from those of you who've read my blog post, this was the preacher's kid. And everything in me told me, don't talk to him, don't talk to him, don't talk to him. But I didn't listen because, like I said, I was still struggling in that area of so strongly desiring a relationship that I pretty much made it my God. And so it was bad news from the start, but I didn't listen to the Holy Spirit. I was like, oh, Lord, I'm sure He's changed and stuff. So I started back talking to Him, and we went on dates and stuff. But the thing was that I would wear a purity ring, but he pretty much didn't respect that. Like, he had a problem with the fact that I wanted to wait until marriage, even though previously, for those of you who read my blog post, those lines had already been crossed between us. So that right there was a red flag right there, and I should have ran, but I didn't. And little by little, I started compromising. Little by little, I started breaking the rules that I had set for myself. The rules that I knew that in order to stay pure, I had to follow those rules. And I ended up compromising. And afterwards, I hated myself so much. And I was like, Lord, I had been going strong for 4 years. And I broke that promise, that covenant that me and God had. I broke that. And so I started just trying to rebuild the pieces. I immediately severed that relationship with my ex. And I ended it. And I just started back trying to get my life back right with the Lord. And the amazing thing about God is that even though I made that mistake, He forgave me. And He comforted me because it was hard for me, because that individual, I cared so much about him. He was a huge part of my life. And because I crossed that line, that soul tie had been made. And that was hard to let go, but God strengthened me through it. So, leading into January, I started showing signs of being pregnant. I had the nausea, the fatigue, like all the different signs. And I freaked out. I was like, Lord, I can't be pregnant. First of all, I'm like, I have carried myself in a way. I have proclaimed to be your child and to be delivered from these things. And I made this huge mistake. I'm like, there goes my witness. And then also at the time, like, I was working on my master's. I'm like, I can't be pregnant and work on my master's. I'm like, Lord, I can't do this. And in addition to that, I had just ended things with the person who is the father of my child. And I was literally, I like broke down. I didn't know how I was going to do it, how I was going to get through it. And so it just so happened that the guy contacted me, and I told him that I believed I was pregnant. And the first thing he said was like, this can't be. Like, at the time, he had just had a child with someone else. And he was like, I can't have 2 kids. He's like, I can barely take care of my first child. And he told me he would pay for me to go have an abortion. And that broke my heart, because I'm sorry, but that's murder. I'm like, this child didn't ask for it. So it's not the child's fault. They shouldn't be responsible for the adult's mistakes. So I didn't accept that, and he pretty much said I was crazy for even considering raising this child on my own. And so, as time went on, I ended up having a miscarriage, and that was difficult. It was a blessing in that I would never want to bring a child into this world with them not having their father in their life. A father is so crucial to a child's life, and I didn't want to do that to a child. But it was very painful experience. Physically, emotionally, mentally. It took a lot out of me, but God brought me through it. And I am so thankful that every step of the way, and even though I made that mistake, He overwhelmed me with His love and His mercy and His kindness. And it was a blessing in that experience humbled me, because before I had made that mistake, and because I had been going so strong with not getting caught up in having sex outside of marriage and everything like that, I kind of got this mentality, like that holier than thou mentality, like, oh, I got it together. Now, I didn't verbalize this, but those thoughts went inside of my head. In my mind, I would look down on those who were still caught up in fornication and stuff like that. And that wasn't right. no Christian should ever be like that. Just because you no longer struggle with something, you shouldn't have this mindset like, oh, I have arrived, or oh, I'm better than you. If anything, that should cause you to show even more mercy and more grace to those individuals who are struggling in that area. And I didn't do it. And I truly believe God allowed that situation to humble me. I had to hit rock bottom again, because he was like, no, my child, you're not becoming the woman I have called you to be. I have called you to be someone else. I haven't called you to have that Pharisee-like mentality. And so through that experience, he began to rebuild me and build me up little by little and strengthen me and give me the courage and everything I need to keep moving forward, to not just give up on life and everything. And he truly strengthened me through that experience. And so, from that point on, I recommitted myself to God, and I was like, Lord, this time I am sticking to it. I will not compromise in any way. I will stick to those boundaries and those guidelines that you have given me. It's like, I don't want to sever my relationship with you, Lord. My body is your temple, and I want to glorify you in that. And I did that, and I started truly living for the Lord, and it was such a blessing. Over the summer in July, I had the opportunity to go to Atlanta for the Pinky Promise Conference, and the things that God did in my life, I can't even explain it. That whole experience was so life-changing. I experienced God on a whole new level. In the mornings, we did what was called quiet time with Heather Lindsay's friend Dylan. And I've spent time with the Lord, like in his word and everything, but I never really thought about having like a actual worship session as part of my quiet time with the Lord. I never really sat quietly to hear from the Lord. And I learned how to do that during those quiet times. And one thing God began to work in me, like I had literally set a wall up around me because I had been hurt so much in the past. I didn't want to let anyone get in. And because of that, I kind of limited my friendships. I didn't really have any close friends. I wouldn't let people get that close to me because I'm like, you're not going to hurt me. But God began to change that in me. So one time, it was one of the times during a quiet time, and Dylan had us get in groups, and so we were like kind of praying and stuff. Like we would pray for one another, but then we were kind of like just sitting quietly, spending our time with the Lord. And the girl next to me, her name is Judy. She was just like really crying, like even though we had already prayed for her, but it wasn't just any kind of cry. It's like I could literally feel her pain. I didn't know what the pain was, but I felt it. And the Holy Spirit told me, he's like, I want you to put your hand on her back and start rubbing her back. And I was like, Holy Spirit, I don't know this girl. I'm not touching her. Like, I'm not the touchy-feely kind of person. But I was like, I'm not doing that. That is weird. But the Holy Spirit would not let up. And so I did. And I just began to comfort her. I began praying for her. And that broke something inside of me. That wall I had around me began to come down. I don't know how, but the Lord ministered to me is that if you want those walls that you have around you to come down, you have to reach out to others first. You have to be there for others first. And I didn't really understand it, but I'm seeing it manifested. As I said, I'm working on my master's. And after that experience in Pinky Promise, and I started back to school this fall, God really has helped me to develop such a close friendship with these girls in my program. Like, they are like family to me. We tell each other that we love each other. Like, that's how deep it is. I haven't experienced that in so long. And it's such a amazing, like, how I just walked in obedience. I did what the Lord told me to do. And literally those walls came down. And I was able to build a connection with these girls. I have a close group of friends. Like, and it's an amazing feeling. And it's just, I'm just so amazed by what God has done. And then another thing that happened was last October, I met someone and I started dating someone. And I approached it differently. I talked to the Lord and I was like, Lord, I want to make sure this time I do it your way. I don't want to fall back into sin. I want to set those boundaries and stick to those boundaries. And so when I first started talking to the guy, I told him up front, I'm saving myself for marriage. And if that's something that you can't accept, then we can just stop talking now. And so he did admit that he's never had someone come at him like that before, but he accepted it. And so, and we had a conversation about our limits, the kind of boundaries we're going to set. And so to respect one another, because I didn't want to be a stumbling block to him, and he didn't want to be a stumbling block to me. And so, like, I'll give an example. For one thing is that he is big on booty. So I made sure that I dressed in a way that kind of covered that area of my body up, because like I said, I didn't want to be a stumbling block to him. I made sure that I didn't walk in front of him. I walked next to him. And I really saw, even though that relationship didn't work out, it was such a blessing for me because, one, I didn't compromise. No matter what, I did not compromise. And that was one of the most amazing feelings ever. Knowing that I truly can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. If I stick to God's guidelines, if I stick to those boundaries that He has set for me, and I truly listen to Him and follow God's lead, I will be able to walk in obedience. I will be able to not fall back into those old ways. And that truly blessed me. So yeah, like, I just wanted to share this to encourage you guys. I know a lot of times in the church, we don't always talk about, well, what happens if I fall back into those old ways, you know, or some, like, what to do. Like, it's not always addressed because it's expected, oh, you're a Christian now, you stop living that type of way, especially if it's been some years, you shouldn't be falling back into that. But the thing is that the enemy is constantly tempting us, you know, so if we aren't prayed up, if we aren't setting those boundaries for ourselves and everything, and following, you know, those personal guidelines that God has given us, then we will fall back into those old ways. So, you just have to keep seeking God and know that no matter what the mistakes are that you make or have made, He still loves you. He is still right there. You just have to ask for forgiveness and seek Him and build that relationship with Him and focus on Him and allow Him to change you and do those things in your life. But the key is not to pull away from Him. You can't, because if you pull away from Him, He can't help you. You have to still seek Him, still pursue Him and everything. So I hope this ministers to you, and I'm praying for you guys, and I love you guys. Bye.